I thank the chairman and certainly our witnesses for bringing attention to China's attempt to bully and intimidate Hong Kong into abandoning its rights and freedoms. Hong Kong's success as a free and open city exposes the injustices and hypocrisies of the communist system in China. Congress stands in unity, in bipartisan unity with Hong Kong residents as they fight to protect rule of law and respect for human rights in their city. Yesterday, the Standing Committee of China's National People's Congress formally approved the national security law in time for it to go into effect today on July 1st, the anniversary of Hong Kong's handover to China. This is a date of great significance for pro-democracy advocates in Hong Kong. Ms. Peterson, I think we know how this new law has affected the annual July 1st protests, sadly, but how should the United States respond to these violent crackdowns on protesters?
Thank you for that question. Well, I think obviously we should be condemning it. We should join multilateral groups at the United Nations to condemn it. We should become more active in the UN Human Rights Council, which is being asked to set up an independent monitoring mechanism. And I fully agree with everyone who has suggested the Safe Harbor Act, because I think it is a very strong and significant show of support, more than just talk, to tell people that you will provide safe harbor if they have to flee an authoritarian regime. I want to say one brief thing about the statements that this law will only be enforced against a small number of people. I think that was Carrie Lam's hope, because she really hoped that everyone would be so frightened by this law that everyone would stay at home. And that's one of the reasons the law was brought into force during the COVID restrictions, because it makes it easier for the Hong Kong government to try to persuade everyone to stay home. But clearly that hasn't been the case. I think that there will be far more arrests than perhaps Carrie Lam had predicted. And the big question will be whether the people are tried in Hong Kong, where I do think the judiciary is still independent, or whether the mainland will use Article 55 to bring them to the mainland for trial, which would really be a terrible violation of the Sino-British Joint Declaration.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson. More than just talk, I think, is the operative word there. The Communist Party's move to impose this national security law on Hong Kong seems to be inspired in part by domestic instability stemming from the party's catastrophic handling, as you just mentioned, Ms. Peterson, of the coronavirus pandemic. And I just came from the China Task Force, where I presented a Compensation for Americans Act piece of legislation that I hope we can move forward. Mr. Lee, do you expect discontent at home could push an unstable Beijing to take even more shocking actions against the people of Hong Kong?
Thank you for the question. We expect that the Communist Party of China will, be high-handed in the way they try to, in a way, suppress the protest. But still, the people come out. I think we all have to appreciate the courage of people all marching out today during July 1st. And they have actually two, instruments of suppression. One is the national security law, but actually they have used another law which is a draconian law in the British colonial time, and then they changed it during 97 to make it more harsher. It's a public security ordinance. And I personally was charged for 7 charges for 4 incidents or marches under the public security ordinance, because now they're using the excuse of COVID-19 and saying that they will ban all gathering. And so when we want to organize, all of you witnessed the 1 million and 2 million marches back in June last year. Now it's totally impossible to do that now.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Real quickly, China seems to have accelerated the timeline for passing and implementing the national security law in order to turn the tide against pro-democracy candidates at September's Hong Kong Legislative Council elections. I don't know if you have time to answer because my time's about out, Ms. Peterson, but how do you anticipate the national security law will impact the makeup of Hong Kong's Legislative Council? What actions can the international community take to protect the pro-democracy movement this September?
Thank you for that question. Well, very briefly, I do anticipate that the Beijing and appointed Hong Kong government will try to use this law to disqualify pro-democracy candidates from running for office. I think the democracy movement is being very careful to try not to violate the law, or at least to make sure that there are candidates who can still stand, but it's going to be very difficult. I think they will try to use it as a pretense for disqualifying them.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson. My time's expired. I appreciate the indulgence of the chair, and I want to thank Chairman Elliott for his leadership on this committee and here in Congress. It is an honor to serve with you, sir. I yield back.